Welcome back to Obzera. We are currently 1 week into a conflict that history books could eventually call the beginning of World War III. While the world was sleeping, the geopolitical board was not just moved, it was shattered. The United States and Israel have launched a direct, full-scale offensive against Iran. The implications of this move go far beyond the borders of the Middle East. This isn't just another regional skirmish. It is a fundamental challenge to the global order that has existed since 1945. What we are witnessing is the collision of two irreconcilable worldviews. On one side, the Western military-industrial complex built on shock and awe, high-tech superiority, and U.S. dollar dominance. On the other, a decentralized religious resistance preparing for 45 years for this exact moment. Part 1. The moment the world broke. Let's talk about the strike that ignited the fuse. Last Saturday morning, in the heart of Tehran, a massive decapitation strike was carried out. The target was the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei, hailed as a surgical masterpiece in the Pentagon and Knesset. They believed removing the head would wither the state, but this is where Western game theory falls apart. They treated a religious icon like a CEO. In the West, killing a CEO drops stock and causes panic. In the East, within Shia faith, killing such a leader doesn't create a vacuum. It creates a martyr. Khamenei was 86, battling cancer. He knew his time was short. By staying in Tehran, refusing to flee, and dying with family, he became a timeless symbol of resistance. The West failed to calculate. You cannot deter an opponent who views death as ultimate strategic victory. Part 2. The logic of total war. To understand this war's difference, we must dive into the opponent's psychology. Shia faith is defined by persecution. They are a minority, their narrative built around the oppressed against the oppressor. When reports surface that an Israeli or American strike hit a primary school in southern Tehran, killing 150 young girls, the psychological landscape changed instantly. Western military doctrine calls this collateral damage. To the Iranians, it is a confirmation of their darkest fears, that the great Satan is out to erase their future. Whether the strike was a malfunction, a stray air defense missile, or a deliberate act of terror is, from a strategic standpoint, irrelevant. The result is what matters. The Iranian population is now all in. This is no longer a war about sanctions, nuclear enrichment, or diplomatic leverage. This is a jihad. For the first time in decades, the Iranian leadership has the absolute, unified mandate of their people to use every weapon in their arsenal. They aren't looking for a seat at the negotiating table anymore. They are looking for vengeance. And as we will see, they have spent the last half-century building the exact tools needed to make that vengeance a global reality. Part 3. The death of the Dubai Mirage. While the missiles were falling on Tehran, the shockwaves were felt most acutely in a place that thought it was untouchable: Dubai. For the last 40 years, the cities of the GCC have lived in a gilded cage. Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Doha, and Manama were the shining monuments of the safe haven model. You moved your capital there because it was clean, high-tech, and tax-free. You felt safe because of the invisible umbrella of the American Fifth Fleet, but that umbrella has just been shredded. Iran has begun a systematic campaign of escalation against the GCC. Dubai's international airport was shut down almost immediately because the Iranians are making a very simple, very brutal point. If you house American bases, if you allow Western jets to use your airspace to bomb Iranian cities, you are no longer a neutral Switzerland, you are a target. The economic model of Dubai is built on perception. If the perception of safety is gone, the city is gone. We've seen reports of wealthy expats and billionaires paying $250,000 for a single seat on a private jet just to get their families out of the Gulf. This is capital flight on a scale we've never seen. The reputation of the GCC as a stable hub for global finance took half a century to build, and it has been effectively dismantled in less than a week. This is Iran's first major strategic win. They have forced the West's primary financial partners in the region into a state of total panic. Before we move into the technical breakdown of the Strait of Hormuz and the drone-to-dollar ratio, deep dive investigations like this are only possible because of viewers like you who want the truth behind the headlines. If you find this analysis valuable, if you want to stay ahead of the curve as the world changes, please hit that like button and subscribe to Obzera. We are building a community of people who look at the world through the lens of logic and predictive history, not just sensationalism. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next update. Let's get back to the most dangerous water on Earth. Part 5. The chokehold, the Strait of Hormuz. Now let's look at the map. If you want to understand why your bank account is in danger, you have to look at the Strait of Hormuz. It is a tiny, narrow passage only 33 kilometers wide at its tightest point. You could practically swim across it. And yet, this is the nexus of the entire global economy. 20% of the world's daily oil supply flows through this gap. But it's not just about the volume. It's about the dependence. India gets 60% of its oil from here. China gets 40%. But the real casualty is Japan. Japan is an island nation with almost zero domestic energy. They get 75% of their energy through this tiny strait. The Japanese government has already admitted that if the Strait of Hormuz stays closed, their entire economy will run out of oil and collapse in approximately 9 months. And Iran has officially closed the strait. But there is a second layer to this siege that most people are missing: food. The GCC countries, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, are artificial desert kingdoms. They are beautiful, but they are unsustainable. They don't grow their own food. They import 80% of their calories through that same strait. By closing Hormuz, Iran isn't just cutting off oil exports. They are putting the entire Arabian Peninsula under a medieval-style siege. No food in, no oil out. This leads us to the petrodollar. Since the 1970s, the US dollar has been the global reserve currency for one primary reason: you need dollars to buy oil. If the GC collapses, or if they are forced to stop trading oil for dollars, the American empire loses its most powerful weapon: the ability to print money. The collapse of the GCC isn't just a Middle Eastern problem. It is an existential threat to the American way of life. Asymmetric warfare, the drone revolution. You might be asking, why can't the US military, with its $800 billion budget, just reopen the strait? The answer lies in a concept called asymmetry. The United States military was designed to fight the Soviet Union. It is built around massive aircraft carriers, billion-dollar destroyers, and sophisticated missile systems. These interceptor missiles are technological marvels, but they have a fatal flaw. They cost between $1 million and $3 million per shot. Now, compare that to the Iranian Shade drone. These are not high-tech stealth predators. They are essentially flying lawnmower engines made of plywood and basic electronics, guided by off-the-shelf GPS. They cost roughly $35,000 to $50,000 each. This is the drone-to-dollar trap. If Iran launches a swarm of 100 drones, total cost $5 million, the U.S. Navy has to fire $200 million worth of interceptors. And that's assuming a 100% hit rate. In reality, you often need 2 or 3 interceptors per drone. Iran has a stockpile of an estimated 80,000 of these drones, and they can manufacture 500 more every single day. The U.S. military, despite its massive budget, cannot win a war of attrition where they are spending $100 for every $1 the enemy spends. The Iranians aren't trying to win a naval battle. They are trying to bankrupt the U.S. Treasury and deplete its missile stockpiles before the real war even begins. As we move into the second week of this conflict, the strategy on both sides is becoming even more ruthless. It is moving from military targets to life-sustaining infrastructure. The GCC nations have a critical, fatal weakness. They have no fresh water. They rely 60% on desalination plants, complex, stationary factories on the coast. These plants are the most vulnerable targets in the world. One lucky drone strike on a power plant or a chemical intake valve, and millions of people have nothing to drink. However, the West has its own dark counter-strategy. They know that a ground invasion of Iran would be a suicide mission, a mountain fortress filled with 80 million people ready for jihad. So, they aren't going to invade. They are going to turn Iran into a mountain prison. The plan is twofold. First, the US and Israel are targeting Iran's dams and reservoirs to destroy their already fragile water supply. Second, they are weaponizing Iran's internal diversity. Iran is not a monolithic nation. It is a collection of Persians, Kurds, Azeris, Baluchis, and Arabs. The Western strategy is to flood these ethnic enclaves with weapons and money, encouraging them to break away and fight each other for the remaining water resources. It is a plan to erase Iran as a unified civilization and leave it a fractured, warring landscape for the next 50 years. The stock market collapsed. The final blow of this war won't be delivered by a missile. It will be delivered by a computer in a financial center. The GCC nations, specifically Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Kuwait, have trillions of dollars invested in the US stock market. They are the silent pillars holding up the magnificent 7 tech giants: Nvidia, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and Google. If these nations face internal collapse, if their water is gone, their cities are being shelled, and their oil revenue has stopped, they will be forced to liquidate their US holdings. If the GCC pulls its trillions out of the Nasdaq and the S&P 500, the US tech bubble doesn't just correct, it vanishes. This would trigger a global depression that makes the 1930s look like a minor recession. The war in the Middle East is the master key that connects to everything. It connects to the war in Ukraine, where Russia is waiting for the West to exhaust its missile supplies. It connects to China, which is watching the US Navy struggle to defend a 33-kilometer strait. And most importantly, it connects to your savings account and the stability of the world you live in. We are standing at the precipice of a new era. This is the ultimate test of the 21st century. Can a centralized, high-tech empire built on debt and expensive missiles survive a decentralized, religious resistance built on cheap drones and martyrdom? The Western planners are betting on their ability to fracture Iran and maintain the dominance of the dollar through sheer force. The Iranians are betting on a global uprising, what they call Pax Islamica, to overthrow Western-backed dictators and establish a new Islamic front that controls the world's energy. What do you think? Is the West's divide and conquer strategy enough to save the global order, or are we witnessing the final asymmetric collapse of the American era? I want to hear your analysis in the comments. We read every single one, and some of the best insights come from the Obzera community. If you found this deep dive investigation helpful, subscribe to Obzera and share this video. The more people understand the hidden logic of this war, the better prepared we all will be for the world that comes next. Thank you for watching Obzera. Stay informed, stay grounded, and we will see you in the next deep exploration.